So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Roko, Michelle, and our extra special guest, Kathleen Sullivan. So the three of us all used to work together at Sutter Health, lean process improvement, coaching leaders, but that's not where Kathleen is today. So we kind of all spread out. So Kathleen, I'm reading this because she couldn't even remember what she was. Experienced transformation consultant with UC Davis Health, because it doesn't matter about the title, it matters about what you do.
She's so much more than the title.
She is so much more than the title. It's Kathleen, and certified coach through ICF. And so we're super excited. So this week's topic is on the power of being respectful. And of course, we're going to kick off with a quote. And there were probably more quotes, seriously. And I said this before on something else, but I can't believe how many quotes I found around respect. And there's one from Taylor Swift that I'll share later too, but that's not where we're kicking off. So the first one is, no matter how talented, rich, or educated you think you are, how you treat people is what really matters. And I don't think, I know, it's more powerful and more important than what I think people give credit to around the engagement that you have with somebody else. And it's important to understand from the other person's perspective what respectful means to them. So it doesn't necessarily have the shared meaning for all of us, the same meaning. And so I think one of the lessons learned around leadership is take the time to really understand what matters to the people that you're working with, peers, whoever else, so that you can show up in a respectful manner. So that's what I have to say on that right now. Kathleen, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm going to share what I found as a definition of respect.
Okay.
Respect means that you accept somebody for who they are, even when they're different from you or you don't agree with them. Respect in your relationship builds feelings of trust, safety, and well-being. Respect doesn't come naturally. It is something you learn. I saw that and it just really resonated with me with everything that, everyone's been going through with COVID and, trying to get back to the new norm and whatever that might look like for everybody, because we know that's never going to happen again, right? And knowing that so many things are going on with people, and we don't know what that looks like for people's home lives and work life, and even coming into work and what that looks like for them, whether it's travel. I mean, especially with the traffic, the weather we've had here in Sacramento.
Oh yeah.
It's, am I going to run into a tree? Or what does that look like for me? Am I going to make it into work? And I think that sometimes we just don't take the time to respect the people that are coming into work and truly noticing them and respecting what they're going through. And I think it's so incredibly important when you ask how somebody is doing to really mean it and take the time to really listen to them. Because I think respect is just that sometimes, is to just really listen and hear what they're going through. And I don't think we do enough of that today.
Yeah.
So my favorite Kathleen story, I have so many, but I'm so glad that we're on this topic today because Kathleen embodies that whole definition and the quote that you said, that you kicked us off with, Michelle. And I think this story really speaks to it. When we were at Sutter Health, and I think Kathleen had maybe been at Sutter Health for a week. She was supporting an event and she had lots of things she was carrying them into the building. And another person who was entering the building besides her from the parking lot, she called out to them and said, "Hey, can you help me carry these in there?" Because the person clearly was going to walk in without offering help to her. And she called out to them, and they helped her all the way up to the second floor and got all the supplies into the conference room. And there was our direct boss happened to observe the whole thing, and later came up to Kathleen and said, "Do you know who that was that you asked to help you?" And she's like, "No, but it was a body. I consider them a teammate because they were a fellow Center Health employee." And it was actually like the COO of the organization at the time. And so one of our senior executives, if you will. But, you know, at the very beginning, you mentioned the quote about it doesn't matter your title, your status, your education. You know, it's about noticing that person. And Kathleen, you mentioned the noticing, right? You were clearly in need of help. And if that person had noticed the surroundings and what she was struggling with when she was walking in, there would have been mutual respect. But the fact that he helped her, he deemed himself by helping her through. But I love that story because it truly embodies, I think, what you were talking about in both the quote and your definition.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're talking about that, because my brain goes to a gazillion different things, right, that can contribute to that. And so Kathleen could have been miffed because he didn't offer to help on his own and walk in miffed and struggle with all the stuff. But out of respect, right, for him and the fact that he could have had 50 zillion plates juggled in his head and not paying attention, having situational awareness, you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, "Hey, you know, can you help?" And it's like, "Oh, yeah, of course I can help." But I think what happens too is I'm dealing with another situation with some leaders in an organization that there's so much miscommunication between stuff. It's like ships in the night right now, that in discussing with these two leaders, there's these experiences that have been created. There's stories that one has going about why someone else's behavior is the way it is. And what happens when we're charged that way, right, and don't necessarily have the truth and the facts and what's going on, and we don't at our core show up respectfully for people, the outcome in the discussions can be less than ideal. And it's one of those things, as I reflect back on the stuff that I'm trying to help salvage, you know, conversations and everything that's happening. If they had shown up with this intentionality about being respectful, then there wouldn't have been those underlying assumptions that take place and stories that are going on about why someone is or isn't doing something, or this label attached to somebody that by the end of the day, it's like, "Oh, they're just da 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 da." And it's like, really? So I think about that, and I think about the power of being respectful. And I think if you bring respect into that, it doesn't unwind to the point that it is now that you have to put the extra effort to pull it back together.
Yeah.
So I love what you said.
Go ahead,
Michelle, on that it's that story. And I think that so many times we ignore people because we are telling ourselves the story. So we are disrespecting them by not respecting ourselves as well with the story that we're telling. And if we just simply ask that person and take that time to, you know, respect and listen, like I was saying earlier, and asking them what's going on with them and truly trying to understand who they are as just a person. And that's what's so important to me about respect is learning about who they are and what's going on with them, because a lot of the time the story can be really sad and they just needed to know that they were going to be supported and heard.
Yeah. Roko?
Yeah, I was just gonna tap into something Kathleen said at the very beginning, in that this offering respect is learned. And so if I'm a new leader or an existing leader who hasn't been so respectful, what advice would you give them about starting that learning process of practicing respect?
What comes to mind for me is...
No, not you, Kathleen.
Oh, really? I can't
Yeah.
comment on this. Kathleen, go ahead. What's on your mind about it? Because I have thoughts.
Yeah, I think, I think it's just really asking a lot of questions and learning about that person and learning about that person's talents and what they can actually bring to the team. And I think it's really important to break away from silos that I think a lot of people put you in sometimes, and do a lot of, thought processing and brainstorming within teams and collaborating more. And I think that can be incredibly respectful, because that allows the team to understand and learn who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing you beyond your title or your role and really learning more about what you can bring to the table.
It's not just title and role. It's how you present, right? So I think part of it is, and what the underlying thing is the two things that came to mind for me, right, when I was trying to answer a question that wasn't my question to answer.
And Roko said, "No, Kathleen.
No, Michelle, this is not your question." Is give people grace. So I think that is tremendously respectful, because we're not following them around all day to their personal life, to the meeting that they just got done in, whatever else may go on, right? And the other is assume the best intent. So I think those are two things that when you talk about leaders and where to start and where we are, I think those are two things to sit down and go, okay, am I giving them grace? Or am I just saying it doesn't matter, you don't have a personal life, whatever is going on? And am I putting the intention on them, layering that on when I don't know for certain? But if we step back and assume the best intent, it's respectful to the other person. And I think it allows us to have a different outcome or engagement when we start to have, conversations or engagements with them, and not come in fully charged to, lock horns. We are Tauruses, so.
Yes.
Well, two of you are.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking to Kathleen.
Yeah.
Yes. We're also incredibly gentle giants, right? And so it's so important for us to stop and smell the flowers. I think, I consider myself kind of like Ferdinand the Bull, and I really enjoy taking the time. And if you will, I really like doing that empathy walk with people and getting to learn about them and understanding who they are and what they're going through. Because I grew up, and that's what's so incredibly exciting when you take the time to learn about the people that you're working with.
So Kevin, for the viewers, can you share more about what an empathy walk is if they're unfamiliar with that?
I was wondering too.
So usually, I think you can do it so many different ways, but a traditional empathy walk is 30 minutes. And the thing that I love about an empathy walk is you actually leave the office. So you take that leader or that peer or whoever you want to learn more about and grow with, you take them out of the office. And it can simply be the halls, or it can, most preferably, if it's not raining outside, a walk around the building or even in a park, whatever. But what that looks like is you spend 15 minutes each sharing, so 5 minutes each, so 3 topics of who you are and what made you who you are. So 3 events of truly what made you are today, who you are today. And that it's really enlightening to share that. And sometimes you have no idea what you're going to share with that person. And you grow from that as well. And then when that other person shares it, you have a lot of aha moments. And it's incredibly enlightening.
Yeah, I love that, because when you talked about learning more about the person, when you hear about what has shaped you, to Michelle's point earlier around, we've all had experiences, but we don't necessarily know what those prior experiences are. So asking that question about what has shaped you, what's gotten you to where you are today, really helps give that background information around, how this person may be showing up, and how you might engage in the future with that person.
I've never heard of those before. And I love the idea of the 3 events, because what brings to mind for me is that I've always said we are so much more than the title that we hold. And that gives, and it's a commitment of time, Kathleen, when you think about it. I mean, to go out to where, we're both going to exchange this. But to get some insights into the depth of the person that you're working with beyond that title, because there's got to be some really surprising events that surface for people.
It is. And the thing is it's all about that respect, and it's about that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And to open up and share some of those really hard things that made you who you are today, are really vulnerable. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're going to tap into that. And that other person has to understand that that's what you're doing, and that's respectful. And so before you do that empathy walk, you have to have that conversation of what you're doing. You don't just say, hey, today we're going on an empathy walk. Let's go. Because it is about being vulnerable, and it's about wanting to learn and grow.
And connect.
Yeah. And I love that it's a mutual exchange. So it's not just, initially when you were talking about it, I'm thinking, a leader is going to have this conversation with a direct report. And typically when those conversations happen, it's one way, right? That's the story that we tell ourselves. But with this empathy walk, it's really mutual. So there's an exchange of those events from both people. And so there's respect coming from the direct report to the leader, and the leader to the direct report, which I just love.
It's so funny. There was I still have the Taylor Swift quote that I want to say, but just reminded me of another. When you talk about respect for people, one of the greatest ways that we can show respect is by listening. And so when you talk about that, it's all those opportunities to, step into leader's coach, peer's coach, whatever it is, and truly listen to what the other person's saying. And the power behind it, because if you're sharing something that shaped you, there's going to be inflections in your voice. There's going to be, because it matters. It's something that really matters. So I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it gives purpose.
Yeah.
It gives purpose to building a relationship, and it gives you purpose of learning about that person. And it's actually a really amazing tool to learn that you give that person the respect of 15 minutes of them talking.
Yeah. And then
you have to respect that person of giving them 15 minutes of listening.
Yeah. And, Michele and I have talked about the power of trust, and how you build it and how easy it is to destroy it. And at the beginning, you mentioned, part of respect, the outcome of giving respect is you build trust. And I think these empathy walks are another way, again, that you are expressing or demonstrating respect. And the outcome of that could be the building of trust for that relationship that you're trying to create.
And like the cat wants respect.
I know, she's like, I have to say hello.
I have to say hello. I have to say hello. It's respect for the cat too.
Well, because she knows Roko's here, so.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to do the Taylor Swift one real quick, because it comes into the other stuff too, as you're sharing empathy walk stuff. And, did I write it down here? No, it's over here. So I'm reading from over here. We don't need to share the same opinions as others, but we need to be respectful. So I think that's it too, is that don't have judgment, give people grace, assume the best intent, especially when people are sharing stuff that's vulnerable. And to your point, we need to create a safe space that we can trust.
Yeah. That also speaks to a little bit of the diversity and inclusion that we talk a lot about in organizations.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're not placing judgment if the perspective or the person's experiences are different, that's the respect of diversity, respecting that diverse.
Well, and it's the whole idea of, and you think about the power of being respectful, understanding what it means to somebody else. And part of that is the diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. It's like, we all have differences, embrace those, celebrate those, respect them. Right. Which it requires, to the point of the definition, there's intentionality, which is one of your favorite words, Roko.
Yes.
Intentionality around the fact that you are going to show up that way. It's not, you're not going to just stumble into it. This requires us to actually do work and step into it and be intentional around it. Especially when we get emotionally charged, that we could probably step into something else. So I've enjoyed this topic, and Kathleen, thank you for bringing it to us. I have one that I want to end with, that we all wanted to end with, and then I want to hear what we want people to walk away with. And maybe that's the mic drop one, right? This one is, you can't force people to show you respect, but you can refuse to be disrespected. So this to me is the empowering piece of it. I encourage you not to tolerate it. Don't tolerate it. So Kathleen, what's one or two things that you want people listening to walk away with?
Just remember to respect everyone, and except for the ones that don't respect you.
Do that. You got to rise above it.
No, I was just, because of the quote. No, I think just take a moment. Just take a moment to stop telling yourself stories and learn about that person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And take the time to listen. And I mean, truly listen. It's amazing when you do that.
It's harder than it sounds like. It's not brain surgery, but it's the listening to the person in front of you and not the dialogue we have going on in our head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Roko.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to build on what Kathleen said and somewhat repeat it with the listening piece. Start by listening and coming from that place of wanting to learn more about that other person and how they came to be, or mm-hmm. why they have that perspective, or mm-hmm. About the situation, mm-hmm. but really see the person and listen to that person.
Thank you. It's kind of mushed in all there where you guys were talking about, because the thing that came to mind for me is around the power of respectful is take a look inside and reflect of situations that maybe you have passed judgment on, people, situations, whatever may be going on, and think about the opportunity to infuse respect into that viewpoint that you currently have of them, to shift it, to create a different experience. It's harder to do when you're emotionally charged, but that's what I would encourage, is when you're in that place, see what you can do as far as getting respect in there and creating different conversation and different outcome. So thank you, both of you. I have not been in a room, virtual or otherwise, with all three of us in a long time.
Too long.
So I've missed it. So thank you. So this has been Leadership Soundbites, Roko, Michele, and Kathleen. Until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and send us topics, or offer to be on the podcast or vodcast, or whatever you want to call it, and pick your topic. So until next time, thank you.
Bye-bye.